Friends, if I want to watch super hit movie Reacher in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Reacher. I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you apart. From this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Reacher is an American action crime television series developed DBI Nick Santora for Amazon Prime Video. Based on the Jack Reacher book series by Lee Child, it stars Alan Ritchson as the title character, a self-proclaimed hobo and former U.S. Army military police officer with formidable strength, intellect, and abilities. During his travels, Reacher crosses paths with dangerous criminals and battles them. The first season of Reacher was based on Killing Floor, Child's 1997 debut novel, and was released on February 4, 2022. The second season, based on Bad Luck and Trouble, 2007, began on December 15, 2023, and concluded on January 19, 2024. The third season, based on the 2003 novel Persuader, premiered on February 20th, 2025, and concluded on March 27th, 2025. In October 2024, before the third season premiere, the series was renewed for a fourth season. A spin-off series, Neagly, is in production. Premise: Jack Reacher is a former U.S. Army military police major with extensive investigative and combat experience who prefers to live as a drifter, traveling from town to town across the United States. In the first season, Reacher visits the rural town of Margrave, Georgia, where he is arrested for the murder of a man who turns out to be his brother. After he is freed, he teams up with two honest police officers, Oscar Finlay and Roscoe Conklin, to investigate a local conspiracy involving corrupt lawmen, politicians, and a wealthy business tycoon and his son who are running a counterfeiting syndicate. In the second season, Reacher is contacted by Frances Neagly, a former member of his old Army Special Investigations Unit. She tells him of the murder of another unit member, and they assemble the unit's remaining members to avenge his death. Their investigation leads them to a technology company with a corrupt security division conspiring with an arms dealer. In the third season, Reacher attempts to rescue a DEA informant and delves into the dark heart of a rug importing business that is a front for an arms trafficking enterprise led by Xavier Quinn, an enemy from his past. Cast and characters: Alan Ritchson as Jack Reacher, Maxwell Jenkins as young Jack Reacher, Malcolm Goodwin as Oscar Finlay, Margrave PD police captain and chief detective, Willa Fitzgerald as Roscoe Conklin, Margrave PD sergeant, Chris Webster as KJ Kleiner, the entitled son of Kleiner Sr., who is assisting his father's criminal operation. Bruce McGill as Mayor Grover Teal, a crooked politician in league with the Kleiner family. Maria Sten as Frances Neagly, a corporate security professional who served with Reacher in the Army's 110th Special Investigations Unit as a master sergeant. Serinda Swan as Carla Dixon, a forensic accountant in corporate risk management who served with Reacher in the 110th Special Investigations Unit. Sean Sipos as David O'Donnell, a lawyer with a family who served with Reacher in the 110th Special Investigations Unit. Ferdinand Kingsley as AM, a seasoned mercenary and terrorist arms dealer traveling under multiple assumed identities. Robert Patrick as Shane Langston, a former NYPD detective and the corrupt head of security for New Age, a private defense contractor. Sonia Cassidy as Susan Duffy, a DEA agent who is leading an investigation into Zachary Beck. Johnny Berchtold as Richard Beck, Zachary's son who lost his ear to terrorists. Roberto Montesinos as Guillermo Villanueva, a DEA agent and member of Susan Duffy's team. Olivier Richters as Paulie Van Hoven, Zachary Beck's hulking bodyguard and Quinn's henchman. Brian T. as Francis Xavier Quinn Julius McCabe, a corrupt former U.S. military intelligence lieutenant colonel turned arms dealer and previous nemesis of Reacher. Anthony Michael Hall as Zachary Beck, the owner of an Oriental rug importer, Bizarre Production. Development. On July 15, 2019, a TV series adaptation of Lee Child's Jack Reacher novels was announced by Amazon. Nick Santora, who created Scorpion, was set to write, showrun, and produce the series through Paramount Television and Skydance Media. On January 14, 2020, the TV series was greenlit with Don Granger, Scott Sullivan, David Ellison, Dana Goldberg, Marcy Ross, and Christopher McQuarrie as executive producers with Child. The first season was announced as an adaptation of Child's novel Killing Floor. In July 2021, it was announced MJ Bassett had joined the series as a director. On February 7, 2022, Amazon Prime Video renewed the series for a second season. To adapt the books to screen, the writers decided they would need to make Reacher verbalize his thoughts more often, but that they would keep his dialogue short and direct and have him only speak longer to people he respects. They also decided to introduce Neagley to the series earlier than in the books, 6. On December 2, 2023, ahead of the second season premiere, it was revealed that filming of a third season had begun. On October 9, 2024, ahead of the third season premiere, Amazon renewed the series for a fourth season. Casting. On September 4, 2020, Alan Ritchson was cast in the title role. On March 22, 2021, Malcolm Goodwin, Willa Fitzgerald, and Chris Webster were cast as series regulars. On May 19, 2021, Bruce McGill, Maria Sten, and Hugh Thompson joined the main cast. On June 11, 2021, Kristen Kruk, Mark Bendavid, Willie C. Carpenter, Curry Graham, Harvey Guillen, and Maxwell Jenkins were announced to have joined the cast in undisclosed capacities. On September 14, 2022, Sean Sipos joined as a series regular for the second season. On September 21, 2022, Serinda Swan, Ferdinand Kingsley, and Rory Cochrane joined the main cast, while Dominic Lombardozzi, Luke Billick, Dean McKenzie, Edson Morales, Andres Calantes, Shannon Kook, Ty Olson, Josh Blacker, and Al Sapienza were cast in guest roles for the second season. Goodwin, Swan, and Lombardozzi already starred in Santora's Breakout Kings in 2011. On May 5, 2023, Robert Patrick was cast to replace Cochran, who left due to a scheduling conflict with the second season. On February 8, 2024, Anthony Michael Hall and Sonia Cassidy were cast as series regulars for the third season. On March 6, 2024, Brian T., Johnny Birchtold, and Roberto Montesinos were cast as regulars of the third season, while Daniel David Stewart in a recurring role. In May 2024, bodybuilder Olivier Richters, also known as the Dutch Giant, was cast as Persuader's secondary antagonist, Paulie. Filming. A temporary townscape was built in North Pickering, Ontario to support filming of the first season. The entire fictional city of Margrave was built from the ground up in a leased farm field in Ontario. Other areas of filming include Toronto, Port Perry, and Pickering. Principal photography of the first season took place between April 15th and July 30th, 2021 in Toronto. During filming, Ritchson broke a bone in his shoulder, which required surgery. He also tore an abdominal muscle during a fight scene. Filming for the second season took place between September 2022 and March 2023. The season was filmed in various locations in Ontario, Canada, including Toronto, Brampton, and Hamilton. Filming for the third season took place in between July and November 2023. Different parts of Canada served as backdrops, including Millbrook, Brantford, and downtown St. John's. Filming for the fourth season is scheduled to begin in summer 2025. Release. The first season's episodes were released on February 4, 2022. For the second season, the first 3 episodes were released on December 15, 2023, with an additional episode released each week through January 19, 2024. For the third season, the first 3 episodes were released on February 20th, 2025, with an additional episode released each week through March 27, 2025. Reception. Audience. Reacher was the most streamed television series for the week of February 7th to 13th, 2022, according to the Nielsen streaming rankings, the first Amazon production to achieve the feat. Critical response. For the first season, the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported a 92% approval rating with an average rating of 7.3/10, based on 75 critic reviews. The website's critics' consensus reads, Reacher captures the trademark bulk of its titular hero while trading away some of his definition, but fans of the novels will find plenty to love about this faithful adaptation. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 68 out of 100 based on 18 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Lucy Mangan of The Guardian said, "This rollicking adaptation of Lee Child's Man Mountain ex-military sleuth is hugely fun, packed with punch-ups and far better than Cruise's movie efforts." Michael Hogan of The Telegraph wrote, "Reacher is huge, pulpy fun and far classier than you might expect." Joshua Alston of Variety praised the casting of Ritchson, but said the character was unsuitable to carry this kind of show. The longer it runs, the more obvious its protagonist-shaped void becomes. Dan Feinberg of The Hollywood Reporter called it frustratingly over-faithful to the source material, saying, "I wouldn't mind another season, but I'd probably still rather read another book." The second season has a 98% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 43 critic reviews, with an average rating of 7.8/10. The website's critics' consensus states, "Brawny as Alan Ritchson's biceps, Reacher swaggers confidently into its sophomore season as rock'em sock'em pulp with a sly wink." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 79 out of 100 based on 14 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 38. Conversely, Forbes panned the second season as one of the worst shows on TV, adding that there's just not enough going on to make him Reacher a particularly compelling protagonist. The third season has a 98% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 42 critic reviews, with an average rating of 8.1/10. The website's critics' consensus states, Jack Reacher finally picks a fight with someone his own size in this crunchy third season, reliably doling out justice to foes and satisfaction to viewers. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 76 out of 100 based on 11 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The latest season was complimented by Forbes for having improved after certain disappointments from the previous season. Spin-off. Main article Neagly. On September 4th, 2024, it was announced that a spin-off series focusing on the Reacher series, Regular Frances Neagly, was in development at Amazon Prime Video, with Maria Sten set to reprise her role. On October 1st, 2024, it was announced that Prime Video had greenlit the series, with Santora and Nicholas Wooten serving as showrunners for the series. Filming on Neagly commenced in Toronto in February 2025. Reacher Review. Dear fellow fans of Lee Child's inimitable creation, all you need to know about Reacher, Amazon Prime Video, the new television series based on the books, is that for the first 6.5 minutes of the opening episode, Reacher says nothing. This, for the uninitiated, is both the defining feature of Jack Reacher, our ex-military police, lone wolf hero, and man with virtually no name, and a recurring line in the series of books about his violently noble and nobly violent adventures. Silence is the essence of the man. Most of the outrage surrounding the casting of Tom Cruise in the role for the two film adaptations of the 9th and 18th books dwelt on the fact that Reacher is a 6'5" and 250-pound wall of muscle, and Cruise is not. But it should have been at least as much about the fact that Cruise's essential energy is that of a chirrupy people-pleaser, and Reacher is living proof that a man can be an island if he just puts his mind to it. Now at last, we have everything. A production team that understands that, like Harry Potter fans, we need the books. Precision engineered already to deliver exactly what is expected, translated to the screen as fully and as smoothly as possible. And Alan Ritchson, an actor the size of a house and roughly as expressive unless called upon to be otherwise. He has all of Reacher's stillness and confidence. He exudes exactly his brand of weary patience. And somehow, And of all these gifts, this one surely had the producers falling upon him in weeping gratitude. He is capable of delivering Reacher's occasional but vital monologues about how exactly he is going to break the next 7 people's heads. The inaugural Reacher series is based, as is right and proper, on the first book in the novel sequence, Killing Floor. If you have read Killing Floor, you now know, and this is a promise of delight, not disappointment, exactly what happens in it. But, again, for the uninitiated, our enormous hero gets off a bus on a whim. This and drinking black coffee is what he does in the tiny town of Margrave, Georgia, and is quickly arrested on suspicion of murder. Now he must stay in Margrave and prove he didn't do it. And when he finds out who has been killed, the matter becomes a personal, find everybody responsible and kill every last one of them. In the process, he gets put in the bad part of a prison to await arraignment and must use his finely honed fighting skills to stay alive. To see Ritchson walking serenely out of a bathroom littered with bleeding bodies is to know a very special kind of peace. Befriends a lady, Reacher is allowed 1 lady per adventure, and forges a mutually respectful alliance with the investigating officer who is reluctantly impressed by both Reacher's intellect and street smarts, which combine to give him almost Sherlockian powers of deduction. Ritchson's delivery, with just a flicker of knowing humor about the eyes, of these litanies of deduction on screen recall gloriously the heady days of Paul Gross doing similar monologues as Constable Benton Fraser in Due South, albeit with the slightly more surreal atmosphere of the show to help him sell it. Ritchson works alone. Amazon's take on Reacher is as solidly made as he is and delivers the rollicking yarn as efficiently as the man himself can dispatch a Glock-wielding gangster. It is great, great fun, and will come as a great, great relief to the Reacher devotees who will surely, at least at first, form the bulk of viewers. It will please them endlessly, but is still drawn broadly enough as a crime drama to attract others. Pour yourself a black coffee, sit back, and enjoy. Plot: Jack Reacher was arrested for murder, and now the police need his help. Review: I have to confess that I have never read any of Lee Child's Jack Reacher novels. I've always wanted to, but just haven't got around to it yet. So I'm judging this new series Reacher, based on the novel Killing Floor, currently streaming on Amazon Prime, on its own merits. The Jack Reacher movies starring Tom Cruise were entertaining, but fans of the books had complained that he was miscast, and that the character of Reacher in the books is described as a blonde 6 feet 5 in, 1.96 meters tall, 250-pound man, while Cruise is a 5 feet 7 in, 1.7 meters tall brunette. So it's understandable why fans were outraged at this casting choice. This new series from Amazon stars Alan Ritchson as the title character, and he is definitely more fitting for the role due to his massive build. I remember first seeing him in Smallville, where he played Aquaman, and in Reacher, he gets a mini reunion with Kristen Kruk, who played Lana Lang. I had no expectations before watching this series, so I went in with an open mind, and I can safely say that Reacher feels like a throwback to classic action from the 80s and 90s. Jack Reacher himself is a beast, and it's a running joke throughout the series how huge he is with Ritchson perfectly cast. He can handle himself in a fight, coming across as the classic invincible badass, but he also has the brains to match his brawn. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty if it means doing the right thing, while rarely getting sentimental or close to anyone emotionally. It's refreshing to see a character that isn't miserable all the time, but cracks one-liners like he does next. This series is like a return of the classic action hero with a modern twist, and I've missed shows like this. Reacher is a drifter who wanders the country looking for people to help, reminding me of old-school action shows like Renegade. At the beginning of this season, he gets off a bus in the town of Margrave, Georgia, but actually filmed here in Toronto, and within minutes is arrested for murder, but all is not what it seems in this small town. He grudgingly befriends 2 police officers, Roscoe Conklin, Willa Fitzgerald, and Oscar Finlay, Malcolm Goodwin, and they work together to discover what is going on with more bodies dropping daily, and a mystery that deepens with every episode. The tone is practically perfect here, with some nice moments of humor, a good mystery to solve, and some twists to the story. This show is far grislier than the Tom Cruise films, which were PG-13, so this gets quite graphic at times, but never overly gory. It's mostly what we see after the violence has happened. I think adaptations of books like this work better as television shows rather than movies, as we get time to really explore the characters and build the world rather than having to rush it into a 2-hour runtime. I found myself genuinely caring for not only Reacher but Roscoe and Finlay. They are all immediately appealing characters who get their respective moments to shine, and they have an excellent rapport with Reacher. It doesn't take them long to realize that he isn't the bad guy, but still is no nonsense, and it's like he can't help leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. We get regular fight scenes and shootouts, and at one point Reacher even suits up for war just like in Commando. The finale is wonderfully satisfying, and we even get a return of the epic bad guy death, especially in that last episode. I'm not going to go into any more detail in terms of story or who the villains are, so I don't spoil anything, but if you're looking for a new action TV show to binge, this is it. Is it perfect? No, some of the dialogue I was saying before the characters were so, it was a little predictable, and it is a little formulaic at times. There is also a CG explosion in the final episode, but it's not bad, and I've seen far worse. I'm literally just nitpicking here. Overall, Season 1 of Reacher is one of the best action shows I've seen for some time, and it's a welcome return of the old-school action hero who spews one-liners like he breaks necks. Season 2 has just been officially announced, entitled Reacher Round 2, probably, so I'll be there to see where our hero goes next, and we can guarantee we'll need a whole load of body bags. The biggest compliment one can give the new Amazon series Reacher is that Alan Ritchson owns the role now, despite it previously belonging to Tom Cruise. Cruise may not have been the right physical size for an elusive, brutal hero that author Lee Child originally wrote for a 6'5" tall person. But the megastar nonetheless tried to make the character his, especially during the gold rush of middle-aged star vigilante movies like Taken and The Equalizer. With Cruise's 2 Reacher films forgotten by the genre, though Christopher McQuarrie's Jack Reacher is pretty good, in Saunders Ritchson's version of the character, fulfilling his hook from all along. He's the smartest and the biggest guy in any room when you normally get one or the other. Reacher finds more space to roam with this 8-episode first season that introduces him as an enigmatic lone legend and then watches him unravel different tiers of a conspiracy taking place in a sunny peach pie slice of Georgia. The show hits you with a lot of questions immediately, like the mystery of this special military police investigator with a list of war medals suddenly rolling into the quiet town of Margrave, GA. At the same time, a body been found, shot, its limbs broken and covered with a cardboard box. Many bodies will pile up. A police station and a mayoral system will be turned upside down, and the encyclopedia in Reacher's brain will keep flipping back to some clue about animal feed. The elaborate plot to showrunner Nick Santora's Reacher can feel a bit tangled, with a whole bunch of surnames to not get mixed up, constantly shifting positions of power in this small town, and a sense that the conspiracy is only going to get deeper, even though the flatly written villains practically twirl their mustaches in sinister delight. But it makes for some solid, twisty TV storytelling. And death often has a formidable gravity as things get personal for practically every character. And thankfully we have people hunter Reacher guiding us through it all, who is not only often correct about his intuition with people, able to analyze clues to know what someone is thinking or where they're going, but his detective skills keep the story moving from one non-obvious clue to the next. The larger fun of Reacher in this form is also to see a Schwarzenegger-grade action presence use their head so much, including the way that Ritchson's Reacher headbutts people as if his forehead was a concrete block. When the filmmaking can keep up with his titanic limbs, it can practically make you dodge while looking at the screen, as in a prison shower rumble in the first episode that gives him a bone-breaking introduction as a heavyweight fighter. His punches hit like speeding trucks, and the camera often lets us see him take down numerous opponents at the same time with brutal finesse. The action in general hints at how much care Amazon is putting into the show by giving creative space for standout fight choreography. The universe of Reacher is expansive, with other characters playing a central part to the investigation, all sharing good chemistry with Ritchson. Willa Fitzgerald is her own force to be reckoned with as Roscoe, another cop suspicious of Reacher, who later enters into a relationship with him that the show tries to leverage by affirming her as an independent badass. And Reacher finds a striking opposite in Police Chief Finley, Malcolm Goodwin, a Harvard-educated, tweed suit-wearing, carry-on my wayward son, blasting black man from Boston who encounters racism in the predominantly white town he wants to protect. Though for a show that feigns playing evenly with gender and race, it can be overzealous, like when it has no problem writing a cringing scene in which Reacher explains blues music to Finley. But if this first season is any indication, Reacher is bound to have as supportive a home on Amazon as with the incredibly popular Jack Ryan. The character seems to fit better here, with the benefit of Ritchson's own multi-tiered charisma, which only starts with how he looks and sounds like an inflated Paul Rudd. Like Reacher, Ritchson also feels strikingly new to the area, but you can't stop noticing him. It doesn't get old to watch his brain compute and see his fists respond. Know this about Jack Reacher. He's an awfully tall drink of brackish water. No more than 10 minutes go by in Reacher, Prime Video's series adaptation of Lee Child's durable book franchise, without someone mentioning the eponymous character's intimidating stature. Reacher, played here by Alan Ritchson, Titans, is described at various points as a giant, Frankenstein's monster, and, without irony, as 250 pounds of frontier justice. When characters aren't conjuring turns of phrase to describe Reacher's size, the camera is employing forced perspective techniques to render him even larger than the 6 feet 5 inches established in Child's canon. The emphasis on Reacher's physique is a good-faith gesture to fans of Child's 26 and counting novels, some of whom bristled at the pair of Reacher films featuring Tom Cruise as a featherweight version of the legendary Bruiser. And for diehards, that bit of corrective fan service should be enough to justify the series. But the other thing to know about Jack Reacher is that while he's more than a juggernaut, he's not that much more. Which is to say, a serialized 8-hour series might be too much real estate for a Jack Reacher of any size. Reacher is technically an origin story, with creator Nick Santora faithfully reproducing Child's debut killing floor. But as in the novel, there's not much origin to go over as Reacher arrives fully formed. He's an ex-military police investigator living lean off his pension who wanders about the country stumbling onto criminal conspiracies every 1,000 clicks or so. During a capricious stop in fictional Margrave, Georgia, to learn more about a blues guitarist, Reacher winds up the main suspect in multiple murders, one of which hits close to home. Naturally, it isn't long before Reacher has cleared his name and informally joined forces with Margrave's finest to uncover the real culprit and kick a few hornet nests in the process. All the ingredients are there for an appealing case-of-the-week drama built around the drifter with a heart of gold archetype that has populated television since the days of Kung Fu, and then came Bronson. While Reacher is a man of few words, the few he does say tend to be a perfectly timed rejoinder, or a deduction so savant-like it borders on the supernatural. He maintains a prickly but mutually respectful relationship with Margrave's foppish lead detective, Oscar Finley, Malcolm Goodwin, and a when-will-they flirtation with Officer Roscoe Conklin, Willa Fitzgerald. There's even an awkward lab tech, Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows, to cut the tension when the team's inspecting the splattery murder scenes, which are actually a bit toned down from Child's lurid descriptions. Suffice it to say, Child's bad guys consider their enemies' genitals fair game. But this is Prime Video, not CBS nor USA circa Burn Notice, and Reacher comes courtesy of Skydance Television, which also developed Amazon's Jack Ryan series. While Prime Video may be casting about for the next Game of Thrones, its current brand identity is yoked to its popular adaptations of Father's Day fiction. Given the popularity of Jack Ryan and Bosch before it, a Reacher series is a no-brainer, as is its execution, if the goal is to avoid fixing what ain't broke. And so here is Reacher, supersized and adrenalized, a recreation of Killing Floor with even more sex, punching, and frenzied cliffhangers. The difference between Reacher and Amazon's other dad-fic dramas is that the longer it runs, the more obvious its protagonist-shaped void becomes. That's not a criticism of Ritchson, whose casting borders on the miraculous. Ritchson's physique cuts the right figure, and he has the charm needed to split the difference between Child's brutal Reacher and Cruise's version, which replaced the conspicuous brawn with stealth and guile. Ritchson excels during the terrific fight sequences, but keeps the demeanor of a man who fights his way out of jams because he wants to, not because he can't talk his way out. The deficiency is Reacher himself, a character beloved for qualities that leave him ill-equipped to anchor a serialized drama. Reacher lives austerely, traveling with little more than a toothbrush and occasionally stopping to buy second-hand t-shirts when the previous one gets drenched in henchman blood. He's most known for his brutal Krav Maga-inspired fighting style, which is well represented here in sequences where he rips through groups of generic toughs and seems barely inconvenienced. As he clips through the mystery, he's never wrong about a single conclusion. And forget about moral quandaries, as Reacher's compass is always stuck at true north. Ultimately, Reacher simply isn't a character designed to carry a dynamic through line over 8 episodes, especially without voiceover dialogue. Voiceover is criminally overused these days, but Killing Floor is told in first person, which lends interiority to a character in desperate need of it. The closest thing in Reacher is a series of flashback scenes focused on the formative years he spent as a military brat. And the takeaway from those scenes is that Reacher has been pretty much the exact same person since grade school, taciturn, scrappy, and weirdly irresistible to goons who travel in packs of 4 and attack one at a time. Reacher is great company for a couple of hours, as he was in Christopher McQuarrie's efficient feature, Ed Zwick's sequel, or the time it takes to tear through one of Child's novels, which have sold tens of millions of copies. For even some rabid Reacher fans, this 8-hour series will be the biggest single span of time they've spent with the character, and the cracks appear quickly. Santora makes some wise changes to the source material that make Reacher a bit more sustainable, like the promotion of a fan-favorite Reacher ally who appears despite being introduced in the 6th novel. But Reacher will never be more interesting than Reacher, and he may have finally found the medium that fits too loosely over his big and tall frame. Having read the original book, I initially hated how the opening episode of Reacher Season 3 blew a big twist, until I realized what the show was doing. I've become a fan of Lee Child's Reacher books after reading Killing Floor, which was adapted as the first season of Amazon's show. Part of the pleasure of the books is that each story is standalone. Readers can start with Book 17 and still understand everything that's happening. That's the approach Amazon takes, with each season following Reacher on a new misadventure. My favorite novel from the series is Persuader, which follows Jack going undercover with a suspected gunrunner named Beck. The book is a tense, well-crafted thriller that sees Reacher just about staying ahead of his employer's suspicions. The show also recreates the elaborate fake kidnapping set piece Reacher and his DEA allies stage, where the former rescues Beck's, Anthony Michael Hall, son as a way to infiltrate his operation. The Persuader novel plays the kidnapping straight in the opening passages, only to reveal it was all staged when Reacher is inside the Beck compound. I was pleased to see Reacher's Season 3 premiere following the book's staging of the kidnapping, but I felt a real tinge of disappointment when Persuader quickly lets the cat out of the bag. The first red flag is Reacher, Alan Ritchson, pulling a large magnum, which is unusual for a guy who only carries a foldable toothbrush. What truly gives the mission away is Reacher accidentally shooting a cop and acting panicked and stressed in the aftermath. Those familiar with Reacher will know the character never panics and never loses his cool, so watching him blow a cop away and then fleeing the scene isn't his style. Reacher's stilted delivery of "I didn't know" is also very suspicious also. Of course, I was long spoiled on the undercover reveal after reading the novel, but the fact Reacher was making no real effort to conceal it felt lazy. This was my mistake, since I didn't give the showrunners enough credit. The detail that really sold Reacher's opening scene to me is how the title character is a terrible actor. Part of the mission is selling the attempted kidnapping to young Richard Beck, Johnny Birch told. The operation involves getting Richard to take Reacher back to his father's compound instead of just asking to go to the police instead. That's why Reacher insists on staging the death of a police officer so that the option of going to the police is off the table. Since he's in a state of shock throughout most of the kidnapping, so Reacher's wooden delivery of lines like, "I didn't know," sails right past Richard. Since one of his mottos states, "In an investigation, details matter," it's ironic that Reacher's attention to his own performance sucks. He's his usual stoic self for most of the kidnapping, but since he's not used to being panicked or stressed out, he does a poor job conveying those emotions. Thankfully, Richard's panic and naivete let Reacher get away with some really unconvincing line deliveries. Once he's inside the Beck mansion, Reacher doesn't have to work hard to sell him as a convincing badass. I think the showrunners decided there was no point overselling the reality of Richard's fake kidnapping and wanted to power through it instead. Even if I hadn't been spoiled on Persuader's undercover twist, it would almost be harder to view it fresh. The trailers for Reacher Season 3 spoil the DEA reveal almost immediately, and reading any article or plot synopsis would do the same. I was holding on to the memory of reading Persuader with no real idea what the story was, so it surprised me. Books and TV shows are two very different mediums, and ultimately, the twist comes too early for it to be an actual spoiler. I suppose Reacher's Season 3 premiere could have handled the kidnapping more straightforwardly and worked to keep the twist hidden, but it's not a deal-breaker. Even before his bad acting gives it away, Reacher somehow being present at the site of a kidnapping and wielding a hand cannon is already wildly out of character. I would have clocked it instantly, as would many other fans of the series. It may have taken 3 seasons, but Reacher has finally beaten Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher film in 2 key areas. The controversy over Tom Cruise's casting as Jack Reacher in the screen adaptation of One Shot has lingered within the franchise. Cruise's casting came about after producers spent years looking for an actor who could portray the hulking figure found in Lee Child's Jack Reacher books. When this proved near impossible, they went for star power instead. Despite the outcry against Cruise playing the role, the first film was a comfortable hit and spawned a sequel 6 years later. Amazon's Reacher would correct the Cruise casting years later when Alan Ritchson took over the role. The series has been a huge success for the streaming service, with the 3rd season receiving a new perfect Rotten Tomatoes score. While Cruise's second outing kind of sucked, the Christopher McQuarrie-directed Jack Reacher has aged very well. It's an elegantly made thriller with some great set pieces and a memorable villain in Werner Herzog's The Zek. 13 years later, Reacher finally has the film beat in those areas. A common complaint leveled against Amazon's Reacher during the first 2 series is that the villains were, well, a bit dull. They were neither a physical nor an intellectual match for Ritchson's Reacher, and were easily defeated in the end. The first series had some solid set pieces, but nothing on the level of the car cruise or the finale of Cruise's Jack Reacher. When standards regarding action slipped during the second season, Ritchson himself called the production out and vowed that Reacher Season 3 would do better. I'm happy to report that, in terms of action and villains, Reacher Season 3 is now the gold standard of the franchise. Terrifying as Werner Herzog's The Zek is, his screen time is relatively brief, and he wasn't much of a physical threat to Cruise's Reacher. Season 3 had both Olivier Richter's imposing bodyguard Paulie and Quinn, Brian T., an old enemy from Reacher's past with a love of torture and mind games. Whereas previous antagonists faded into the background, the main threats of Reacher's latest season were always present, and actually felt like threats. The action felt crunchier and better executed, too, from the fake kidnapping that opened the series all the way to the shootouts and fights featured in the finale. Unfinished business. Cruise and McQuarrie are best known for the wild action set pieces of their Mission Impossible collaborations, but Jack Reacher was intended as a more low-key franchise for Cruise. Hence, the set pieces are less intricate, but when the fights of shootouts happened, McQuarrie brought a visceral edge to them. If there was a poll, then the exhilarating car chase McQuarrie staged for the film would rank the highest among the entire series. But Reacher Season 3's Paulie vs. Reacher fight might have it beat. This brutal showdown was the highlight of the original novel, Persuader 2, and sees Ritchson's and Richter's characters tearing apart scenery trying to take each other down. It's completely overblown, macho nonsense, and also one of the action highlights of 2025 so far. It's an exhilarating brawl, and viewers will likely feel bruised just from watching it. The fight might even hurt Reacher in the long run, as future seasons will need signature set pieces of their own to live up to it. Werner Herzog is best known as a filmmaker and documentarian, with his most famous works including Aguirre, The Wrath of God, Fitzcarraldo, and Grizzly Man, but he occasionally dips his toes in acting too. His turn as the Zek in Jack Reacher is one of his most famous roles, a former Soviet prisoner turned ruthless criminal. Herzog is mesmerizing in Jack Reacher, but in terms of actual screen time, he only appears for about 10 minutes. In contrast, Paulie is featured throughout Reacher Season 3, while Quinn makes a strong impression when he finally arrives. Quinn and Paulie are the ideal combination of foes for Reacher, a mix of intelligence, ruthlessness, and brute strength. There's no world where the fingerless Zek could beat the snot out of Cruise's Jack Reacher, let alone the Alan Ritchson version. Ignoring the noise around Cruise's casting, the Jack Reacher movie is an underrated gem and laid the foundation for future McHugh and Cruise collaborations. After 3 attempts, it's nice to see Amazon's adaptation living up to McQuarrie's standards. Alan Ritchson may be off our small screens as a very big man, with Reacher between seasons right now, but soon he'll be on the big screen in a big way in Runner, an action flick alongside Owen Wilson, which is currently underway in the sunshine of Brisbane and the Gold Coast in Australia. The film centers on Ritchson as Hank Malone, a top-tier courier assigned to transport a vital organ to a critically ill young girl. As her life hangs in the balance, the mission quickly unravels when sinister forces emerge, determined to derail the delivery. Ritchson has taken to Instagram, something which he's great for, particularly to show off what he's eating for breakfast, to post a behind-the-scenes look at the movie, including a look at just how bloody he's going to end up in this film. Looks like a bone-crunching good time at the movies, if you ask us. Ritchson also captioned the post, "Another outstanding week on Runner." Also in the big, sprawling cast are Leela George as Kate Baker, Rodrigo Santoro as Damien Zaldivar, Sullivan Stapleton as Josh, and more. The movie is set to be directed by Need for Speed and Expend4bles Scott Waugh, with Miles Hubley and Tommy White writing the script. Mark Fasano from Nickel City Pictures, Jeffrey Greenstein from A Higher Standard, Deborah Glover from G2 Dispatch, Todd Garner, and Dan Spilo are all on board as producers of the movie. This pairing of Wilson and Ritchson is something I believe audiences have been hungry for, said director Waugh in a statement quoted by Deadline, the outlet that broke the news of the movie originally, and we strive to achieve the unexpected from the page-turner script that Miles and Tommy delivered. Ritchson is one of the most in-demand actors around right now, and his upcoming slate reflects that. Along with Runner, he will be returning for the 4th season of Reacher, as well as appearing in its spin-off, Neagly, alongside Maria Sten, and he recently worked on War Machine with Dennis Quaid. This October, he will star in the Amazon MGM holiday action comedy The Man with the Bag as a petty thief hired by Santa Claus, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to recover stolen presents. That edge feels dulled here. A new season, a new romance, this time between Reacher and Duffy. Unfortunately, unlike his previous connections with Roscoe and Dixon, this one feels obligatory, lacking chemistry or narrative justification. It's not offensive, just perfunctor more of a checkbox than a relationship we care about. To the show's credit, the final 2 episodes bring back some of the punch that was missing earlier. Anthony Michael Hall finally gets to show more nuances. Zachary Bear, moving beyond the stop villain Mort Duffy, also steps up in a satisfying way. And while the climax may run a little long, it's filled with enough crowd-pleasing chaos to leave viewers mostly satisfying. Still, the series formula is starting to where then show-ending Santo has crafted a consistent blueprint, but Season 3's plot twists feel more mechanical. It might be time for Reacher to break the mold before the formula starts working against it. Season 3 of Reacher is still a compelling watch, especially for fans of the series and the novels. Ritchson continues to impress, and the show's commitment to gritty, grounded action remains strong. But the emotional core is fading, and the supporting cast doesn't quite measure up. It's a good season, but for a show that once felt exceptional, good might not be good enough. The 3rd season of Reacher drew to a close with an epic finale that wrapped up the story with conflict, revenge, and some happy endings. In a way, Unfinished Business is much like the previous 2 finales in the series, especially with how things wrap up. Yet the unique story this year allowed the narrative to take a fresh new path to a familiar destination. Things work out, but Reacher and his allies face threats unlike ones they've tackled before. Ultimately, Reacher Season 3 is a revenge story. Xavier Quinn killed Dominique Cole, the first soldier Reacher mentored as part of the Criminal Investigation Division of the U.S. Army. He blamed himself for her death in part because he didn't back her up to arrest Quinn. He did this so his protégé could get the credit for the arrest. Only Quinn was more formidable and violent than any of them expected. As he did them, Reacher would only be satisfied if Quinn died at his hands. Yet, over the course of the past 7 episodes, Reacher prioritized saving the lives of innocents. There was Teresa Daniel, a criminal informant captured by Quinn. There was also Richard Beck, the son of Zachary, a gun owner whose operation was hijacked by Quinn, arguably saving the honored call much more than the murder of the man who killed her. Reacher star Alan Ritchson said that 3 hardest weeks of his life were filming the fight scene with a massive power. Watching the confrontation that built up over the season, it makes sense why it took so long to build. The fight actually takes up a significant chunk of the screen time in the Season 3 finale. Yet, unlike many big fights in movies or shows, this one didn't get boring or tedious. Each agonizing moment trading blows was earned. At one point, the 2 fall into the roaring waters of the cove near Zachary Beck's house. This sequence reminded Ritchson of his time on Smallville as Aquaman. Yet, the best part of the fight was how it ended. Powie is the first enemy viewers have seen who is stronger than Reacher. In a purely physical fight, he would have lost. Yet, Reacher tricks him by blocking the barrel of an M60 hanging in the compound's gatehouse like Checo's machine gun. Eagle-eyed viewers can actually catch the moment it does it. Too, as Powie shuffles off this mortal coil, Reacher acknowledges she wasn't as big or strong, but he's smarter. After 2 seasons of watching Reacher barrel through enemies like a stoic Hulk, it was refreshing to see him actually on the back foot. There is no question that Reacher is a superhero, but his fight with Powie helped humanize him. It also makes the moments he dominates lesser. Villains that much more satisfying. This whole season allowed the titular character to showcase his brains over his brawn. One of the best character relationships in the season was between Zachary and Richard Beck. Zachary was a gun owner who had to give over his business to Quinn, who kidnapped Richard and cut off his ear. Father and son reached a sense of understanding in the previous episode, and Zachary saved Richard by pointing the toy gun his son got him for his birthday at the villain. He paid for that with his life. But it was a touching moment when he finally protected Richard from Quinn. Richard begged to reach her. "You were right about my dad. He did the best he could with me. I'm glad I got to see the good in him before he died. I just wish I got to see more of it when he was still alive." After the conflict was over, Richard's future was uncertain. His father's assets would have been seized by law enforcement. He would have lost everything. Yet earlier in the season, he told Reacher he wanted to leave it all behind anyway. Taking a bag full of cash in one of his father's cars, Richard fled the compound to disappear into a new life. He'd lost both of his parents, but his father's sacrifice gave him a chance at a new life. Reacher's influence also gave him a little more confidence to face the world on his own. Teresa Daniel. The other innocent kid wrapped up in this mess was also rescued Susan Duffy. Took her back to her grandmother. While Duffy lied about where Teresa was and why she was missing, Reacher doesn't dwell on any of that. Rather, all viewers see are the two hugging each other, happy to see each other again. Like Richard's ending, not dwelling on the fallout of their traumatic experiences allows it to feel like a true happy ending. There was plenty of action in the Season 3 finale beyond just the fight between Powie and Reacher. The episode opens with the ambush of the ATF agents by Quinn's hired guns. None of the ATF agents survived, despite Reacher being purged with a sniper rifle, which he was going to use to murder Quinn. Beyond just being some fun gunplay for viewers, this prevented Reacher from doing something uncharacteristically stupid. As they try to infiltrate Zachary Beck's birthday party, where Quinn is sealing his arms deal with Yemen terrorists. Frances Negately proves she's earned her spin-off series, the brief scene in which she tells a nosy waiter that she's a private detective investigating his nemesis. Murray is funny. While she's just as lethal as Reacher, her skill set is more about investigation and subterfuge. Meanwhile, Duffy and Viwa sneak through. The house to rescue Teresa and Richard having their own confrontations, just like the fight with Powie. The way these action scenes were constructed was inspired. Rather than just static shots of people shooting and taking cover, it was dynamic and active. Villanueva fought off a security guard while Duffy outsmarted two of the terrorist goons. When all hell breaks loose because Quinn openly kills the buyers and steals their money, the ensuing chaos is glorious. So while it'll end like the past two seasons, Reacher Season 3 wraps up its story in a fresh and inventive way. Susan Duffy in Jack Reacher in dirty clothes with superficial wounds standing in front of an estate from Reacher. Image via Amazon Prime Video. Another fun scene comes when Duffy tells Reacher she's not interested in a romantic relationship. He jokes that she took the speech he usually gives, which may be true for the books. Yet in the past two seasons, Reacher's love interests have all the agency. Both Roscoe Conklin and Carla Dixon are in the driver's seat for their version of this conversation. Frankly, it's refreshing to have the women send Reacher on his way rather than the opposite. Reacher has been a massive hit for Prime Video, with both seasons pulling in great reviews and massive ratings, and fans need to see these shows too. The final 20 minutes of the episode are the only parts of Reacher Season 3 that feel familiar. The series has to wrap up the character stories, ensuring satisfying conclusions for them, and send Reacher off a wandering into the sunset. However, the show has to avoid making this necessary denouement feel rote. There's an almost rushed, tacked-on feeling to this one. Season 1 ended with Reacher saying goodbye to Conklin and Finlay, whereas Season 2 ended with the surviving special investigators commiserating over a fire. Season 3's ending does the job, but it's not as dynamic as all the story that preceded it. Extra information. Reacher Season 3 has received near universal acclaim, continuing the Prime Video series streak of explosive action and gripping storytelling. Based on Lee Child's Persuader, this third outing sees Alan Whitson return as Jack Reacher, the stoic nomadic ex-military investigator. As usual, the season introduces a fresh-setting mystery and cast, though Maria Sten Francis Negerly remains the lone recurring ally. This time the story unfolds in a seemingly quiet coastal college town in Maine. Underneath its calm surface, Reacher uncovers a dangerous network of corruption and kidnapping tied to a smuggling front known as Bizarre Bazaar. Going undercover as a DEA informant, he works with Boston agent Susan Duffy to infiltrate the operations of Zachary Beck, suspiciously wealthy businessman. But Reacher's mission takes a personal turn when he discovers that Beck's operation is entangled with an old enemy. Xavier Quinn, a treacherous former operative Reacher once believed was dead. The third season of the American action crime television series Reacher, based on the Jack Reacher book series by Lee Child, premiered on Amazon Prime Video on February 20th, 2025. The season, based on Persuader, 2003, stars Alan Ritchson, Maria Sten, Sonia Cassidy, Johnny Birch, Roberto Montesinos, Olivier Richtors, Brian T., and Anthony Michael Hall. The story follows Reacher, a former major in the United States Army Military Police Corps, who has agreed to work with the drug to bring down suspected drug smuggler Zachary Beck by going undercover as the bodyguard of Beck's son, Richard. During the investigation, Reacher encounters an adversary from his military past and must balance his desire for revenge against his need to finish his mission. In October 2024, ahead of the third season premiere, it was confirmed that a fourth season was in production. It was later revealed that filming for the fourth season would begin in the summer of 2025. Cast and characters: Alan Ritchson as Jack Reacher, Maria Sten as Frances Negley, Sonia Cassidy as Susan Duffy, a Dear agent, Johnny Birchtold as Richard, Beck Zachary's son Roberto Montesinos as Guo Vion Waver, Olivier Richtors as Paul, Van Haven Brian T. as Francis Savia Quinn, Junius McCabe, Anthony Michael Hall as Zachary Beck recurring, Daniel David Stewart as Stephen Elliott, Ronnie Rowe Jr. as John Cooper, Caitlin McCurney as Annette Helen Taylor as Agnes Guest, Donald Sales as Chapman Duke Stormstein's son as Teresa Daniels, Owen Roth as Warrant, Officer Powell Greg BK as Darian Proto, Manuel Rodriguez signs as Angel Dole, Brendan Fletcher as Harley Quinn's henchman, Mariah Robinson as Sergeant Dominique Cole, Andreas Apis as General Leon Garber, Robert Bazzoki as Private Anthony Tony Fresco, Farhan Gajger as Safwan Casey, Alex Panovich as Taktarov, a dangerous Russian crime boss, Anuasha Almian as NASA Michael Rhodes as Costellos, Nikki Guadani as Mrs. Daniels, Teresa's grandmother. Production on December 2nd, 2023, ahead of the second season premiere, it was revealed that filming of a third season had begun. Casting on February 8th, 2024, Anthony Michael Hall and Sonia Cassidy were cast as series regulars for the third season. On March 6th, 2024, Brian T. Johnny Birch and Roberto Montesinos were cast as regulars of the third season, while Daniel David Stewart in a recurring role. In May 2024, bodybuilder Olivier Richtors, also known as the Dutch Giant, was cast as Persuader's secondary antagonist, Pawai, filming. Filming for the third season took place in between July and November 2023. The different parts of Canada served as backdrops, including Millbrook Brantford and downtown St. John's release. The first 3 episodes of the season were released on February 20th, 2025, with an additional episode released each week through March 27th, 2025. Reacher Season Movie Review. Now that all the episodes of Reacher Season 3 have been released, I think it's safe to say that it's the best season of the entire series. Ever since it first premiered in 2022, Reacher has been referred to by many as the ultimate dad show. This isn't necessarily a bad reputation to have, but it does suggest that a lot of people don't take the series seriously. However, as someone in his 20s with no children, I have to admit that I loved every second of Reacher Season 3. From the very first episode, I knew Reacher Season 3 was going to be different. In the Prime Video show's third season, Reacher goes undercover to stop a mysterious man he knows as Xavier Quinn, Jack Reacher's undercover mission. And his pursuit of vengeance made his most recent outing an amazing watch, all the way to the end of Reacher Season 3. The newest season broke viewership records for Prime Video, which proves there is an immense amount of interest in the series. This is great, since I think Reacher Season 3 is possibly the best season yet. I am delighted that I'm able to praise Reacher Season 3 as much as I am, as I didn't necessarily have high expectations for it after the show's second season. Before talking about Season 2 of the Prime Video series, I also think it's important to reflect on Season 1, which set the tone for the entire show. In Season 1, Reacher uncovered a conspiracy in the small town of Margrave, Georgia. In addition to an intriguing conspiracy, Reacher also teamed up with Finlay and Roscoe, who are incredible supporting characters. Its story setting and characters made Reacher Season 1 a great first season of a television show. However, these 3 attributes unfortunately took a step down in Reacher Season 2. Instead of the small-town setting, Season 2 moved to big cities like New York and Brooklyn, as Reacher teamed up with some of his former co-workers in the 110th Special Investigators Unit. In Reacher Season 2, the titular former military officer worked with his old friends to uncover yet another conspiracy and figure out why some members of the Special Investigations Unit were being killed. It's not necessarily awful, but Reacher Season 2 is worse than the show's first and recently released third season. Its big city setting isn't as effective as Margrave or Zachary Beck's estate in Maine. Additionally, while the members of the 110th Special Investigators Unit are all very capable in Season 2, they are not nearly as interesting as characters like Finlay and Roscoe. Furthermore, the villains of Season 2 are not as good as Season 1's and don't even come close to touching Xavier Quinn, who's terrifying in the show's third outing. Since most of the elements of Reacher Season 2 were disappointing and a clear downgrade from the first, I wasn't necessarily overly excited for Season 3. However, I am happy to report that Reacher Season 3 brought my excitement for the series back. Watching Reacher undercover for the majority of Season 3 was a welcome change to the show's traditional formula. In addition to wanting revenge against Xavier Quinn for the death of Dominique, his first protégé, Reacher also promised that he would save Teresa Susan Duffy's confidential informant who had been kidnapped. Towards the end of Season 3, Duffy questioning whether Reacher was only doing this for revenge or to actually save someone, allowed the show to examine and challenge its titular character in new and interesting ways. Beyond Reacher, who gets several moments to shine in Season 3, the newest season also features plenty of great supporting characters such as Susan Duffy, Vin Waver, Zachary Beck, and Richard Beck. Additionally, its secluded setting and amazing villain makes me think that Reacher season the 3rd of May potentially be better than the show's great first season. Since Reacher Season 3 just ended and is still fresh, I think I will need more time to determine whether I actually like it better than Season 1. However, I can confidently say that Alan Ritchson's performance as Reacher is definitely better in Season 3. In Season 1 of the Prime Video series, it was clear to me that Ritchson was still figuring out the character. However, by Season 3, he fully embodies Jack Reacher and excels in the role. Reacher is usually very calm, cool, and collected, but seeing him saddened and troubled by Dominique's gruesome death in Season 3 makes his character and Ritchson's performance that much better. Additionally, Season 3 is the first time Reacher actually seems like he's in some serious danger since he has to go up against Pillai. The fight between Reacher and Pillai in the Season 3 finale is incredible and allows Ritchson to portray a more vulnerable side of the character. Therefore, I have nothing but great things to say about Ritchson's performance in Reacher Season 3. Since Season 3 shows many different sides of Reacher and follows him as he is undercover in a unique setting. The confirmed Reacher Season 4 has a tough act to follow. Everything about Reacher Season 3, from the intriguing premise, fresh setting, great supporting characters, and terrifying villain, mesh perfectly to make for a great season of television. While it is amazing to celebrate the success of the show's third season, I hope that Reacher Season 4 will be just as good. In addition to Reacher Season 4, Amazon has also ordered the first season of a Negley spin-off, which will further expand the franchise. While not many details are currently known about the next season, there are many great Jack Reacher books that Reacher Season 4 could adapt. In one of our lists, Screen Rant's own Greg MacArthur suggested that 61 Hours Gone Tomorrow or One Shot would be amazing books for Season 4 to adapt. Since there are 29 novels in the Jack Reacher series, the 4th season has a lot of options. Hopefully, whatever book it adapts makes for an amazing story that is just as exciting as Reacher Season 3. Amazon's adaptation of Lee Child's Reacher novels has returned to Prime Video, and I'm happy to report that Season 3 is a huge improvement over last season. Let's be honest, Season 2 of the crime drama was a mess. The plot was riddled with holes, the fight choreography felt half-baked, and the oversized ensemble of Reacher's team diluted the character's lone wolf appeal. It just didn't work. But in Season 3 Reacher, Alan Ritchson is mostly back to being the one-man wrecking crew we know and love. He gets some backup, sure, but this time it feels earned and never overbearing. Ritchson himself looks better than ever, still massive but a bit leaner and more grounded physically. He comes across as more natural in the role, and the show benefits from it. This season adapts Persuader, one of my favorite Reacher novels, second only to Killing Floor, which was the basis for Season 1. Persuader is a much stronger foundation than Bad Luck and Trouble. The book behind Season 2, which many fans, myself, included, see as one of the weaker entries in the Reacher series. We really didn't need a full investigative squad last season. Reacher works best when he's alone, calculating and punching through problems with minimal backup. The good news, Reacher is back in a big way. While Season 3 isn't perfect, it's still wildly entertaining in the best way. Over the top, yes, but without the cringe or chaos of Season 2. The idyllic main setting is a much better fit for our stoic wandering hero than the urban scroll of New York. The bad news? It still doesn't quite reach the heights of Season 1. There's just something missing. It's hard to pinpoint. Maybe a lack of emotional weight, or the absence of the tight character dynamics we had with Finley and Roscoe and Mara. The villain is stronger this time. The tone is tighter, and the pacing is solid, but it doesn't pack quite the same punch. Season 1 delivered so effortlessly. Other information about this film. When you click play on Reacher, you know exactly what you're getting. Since its debut, Amazon's adaptation of Lee Child's novels has delivered a dependable dose of grit, justice, and blunt force trauma, brought to life with brawn charisma by Alan Ritchson. Reacher has spent 2 seasons outsmarting the elite and cracking skulls of goons, grifters, and hitmen alike. Season 3 sticks to this winning formula, though at times it leans a little too heavily on familiarity and suffers from uninspired direction that fails to elevate the material. And yet the core ingredients remain as likable as ever, based on Child's 7th novel. Persuader this season kicks off in medias res, with Reacher deep undercover for the day on a dual mission to rescue an informant and settle a personal vendetta. The new undercover angle injects some early intrigue, but the novelty wears off quickly as the show settles into its now signature rhythm, slowly unraveling a conspiracy, methodically interrogating suspects, and punching his way to the truth in what is surely the signature role of his career. Ritchson continues to be the perfect embodiment of Jack Reacher. He brings the right blend of stoicism and sardonic wit along with the kind of physical presence that makes you believe he could actually throw a man through drywall. Reacher's latest makeshift crew includes stern day agent Susan Duffy, Sonia Cassidy, whose Boston accent wavers a bit their grizzled partner, Vaver Roberto Montinos, and rookie Stephen Elliott, Daniel David Stewart, whose inexperience provides occasional levity. The group dynamic works well enough, but the camaraderie lacks the spark of Reacher's former unit from Season 2 or the standout personalities of Finlay and Roscoe from Season 1. There's a sense that this crew is serviceable, but not especially memorable. One familiar face who does make a welcome return is Maria Sten's Frances Nigley, delivering another confident and charismatic performance. Mariah Robinson also shines as Reacher's former protégé Dominique Cole, so much so that it's a shame her presence is largely confined to flashbacks. Her episode is a highlight, offering one of the few moments this season truly diverges from formula. The rest of the season is solid but predictable. The investigative beats unfold methodically, and while the plot never derails like it did in Season 2, there are few surprises. Direction is women-like, rarely taking stylistic risks or injecting flair into what is often a functional, straightforward production. Thankfully, the season's climax delivers. The much-anticipated showdown between Reacher and the towering Powie, played by Olivia Richtors, lives up to its build-up. Pillai is one of the only on-screen villains who makes Ritchson look small, and their brutal, prolonged clash is a satisfying payoff to an otherwise conventional narrative arc. Ultimately, Season 3 is more pedestrian than it needs to be. Still in an era where justice feels out of reach, the blunt simplicity of Reacher remains oddly comforting. There's something deeply appealing about watching a hyper-competent man with a rigid moral code dish out punishment where it's due. Reacher may not be high art, but it's reliable, cathartic, and unmistakably itself. There are few bigger names in military thriller fiction than Lee Child, and his creation, Jack Reacher, is iconic, so iconic in fact that Tom Cruise's casting in the early film. Adaptations sparked backlash for being too far removed from the hulking presence described. Amazon Prime series thankfully corrected course with Alan Ritchson stepping into the boots. The first season was met with widespread acclaim, not only from longtime fans, but from a broader audience looking for smart, muscular escapism. Now, after watching Season 3, I find myself less convinced than ever that this series still captures the same lightning in a bottle. While much of what makes Reacher watchable is intact, cracks in the armor are beginning to show. As always, Reacher finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. This time, it's Maine. And all he wants to do is sell some old records to fund his next pit stop. But when he witnesses an attempted kidnapping outside the record store, he intervenes violently and soon discovers one of the assailants is a police officer. Now a fugitive again, Reacher embeds himself in the life of the would-be victim. Richard Beck, Johnny Birch, and his father Zachary Beck, Anthony Michael Hall. Of course, nothing is as it seems, and Reacher may be closer to his real target than anyone realizes. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Alan Ritchson continues to be the best thing about this show. It's not just his size, though. The guy still looks like a human battering ram. It's how he carries the character, measured, deliberate, and with just enough dry wit. His physicality sells every fight. But it's the small moments, the raised eyebrow, the quiet stare that really lock in who Reacher is. His scenes with Birch told Richard have surprising warmth, giving the show a needed emotional anchor. The action, as always, is robust and well executed. The show's marketing leaned hard on the presence of Olivia Richtorst as Paul Power Van Haven, and the inevitable clash between these two titans doesn't disappoint. On paper, Season 3 is a faithful adaptation of Persuader, the seventh Reacher novel, but what works on the page doesn't always translate well to episodic television. The pacing is uneven. Some plotlines feel stretched to their breaking point, while others are rushed past in the blink of an eye. The season feels like a narrative accordion, expanding and contracting in awkward, unsatisfying rhythms. You can also feel the redundancy creeping in. Certain story beats feel recycled from previous seasons, and character arcs especially. That of Stephen Elliott, Daniel, David Stewart are so obviously telegraphed, they lose all tension. If you didn't guess that John Cooper was going to kill Elliot within 2 episodes, were you even watching Maria Sten's Frances Needley Returns? But rather than being woven into the heart of the story, she feels tacked on, used for convenience, more than character growth. The same goes for Susan Duffy, Sonia Cassidy, whose chemistry with Reacher is non-existent despite the script's insistence. Otherwise, her fluctuating Boston accent doesn't help. Mariah Robinson delivers a standout performance as Dominique Cole, but her role is confined largely to flashbacks, one of the few creatively ambitious episodes this season offers. And unfortunately, the villains don't hold up. Brian T's Francis Xavier Quinn, a central figure in Reacher's personal vendetta, feels underwritten. Worse, the moral compass that usually guides Reacher through even the griest decisions seems off. At times, he displays a callousness, especially toward innocent characters, that borders on disturbing. If this were a deliberate turn toward moral ambiguity, it could be compelling, but the show never acknowledges it, which leaves it feeling unintentional and jarring. So, do I recommend Reacher Season 3 with reservations? It's still more coherent and engaging than the bloated Season 2, and Ritchson remains a powerhouse in the role. The bones of Reacher are still here. Action justice, a lone wolf who rights wrongs with his fists, but the connective tissue is fading. Whether it's a pacing problem, a tonal misstep, or just the challenge of adapting Persuader for television this season never quite comes together. There's enjoyment to be found, especially for die-hard fans, but also a growing sense that the series needs to evolve or risk becoming a shadow of what it once promised to be. Season 3 of Reacher premieres Thursday, February 20th, 2025 on Prime Video, with the first 3 episodes dropping at once. New episodes will follow weekly, every Thursday. Around Reacher draws its inspiration from Lee Child's 2003 novel Persuader. And for the most part, that's good news for fans of Alan Ritchson's towering vigilante. The novel is known for its explosive opening and lay twists, and this adaptation makes good use of that foundation. One standout addition is the casting of 7'2" Dutch bodybuilder Olivier Richtors as a formidable henchman, one of the few foes who physically dwarfs Reacher. It's a dynamic that adds a unique tension to the season's many brutal showdowns. While the adaptation remains broadly faithful to the spirit of the novel, this significant deviations from the source material than in previous outings, and not all of those changes feel like improvements. More detail. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand why Reacher works so well. Adapted from Lee Child's wildly popular Jack Reacher novels, Prime Video's original series features a magnetic leading man in Alan Ritchson, satisfying action and a compelling new mystery each season. The first season, adapting The Killing Floor, felt like a triumphant reset after the 2 underwhelming Tom Cruise films, embracing a more faithful portrayal of Reacher with a grounded, pulpy aesthetic that perfectly echoed the feeling of breezing through a Reacher novel in an airport lounge. While some may argue that Season 2 lost some of that magic, I'd argue the opposite. It expanded the scale while keeping Ritchson at the center of an equally likable and well-developed ensemble. But Season 3 pulls back again, opting for a more stripped-down approach as it adapts Persuader, the 7th book in the series. This doesn't mean it's short in action, far from it, but as time the bullets fly and the fists land in fewer locations, a sore favorite wandering human tank goes deep undercover. Season 3 finds Reacher in Portland, Maine, recruited by the Dito infiltrate as shady criminal empire led by wealthy businessman Zachary Beck, Anthony Michael Hall, tasked by Shaft Tengati agent Susan Duffy, Sonia Cassidy to locate and rescue a kidnapped informant. Reacher embeds himself inside Beck's estate. Ash digs deeper, he discovers troubling links between the case and a painful chapter from his past. Reacher also bonds with Beck's introverted 20-year-old son, Richard John Birch, told, and clashes repeatedly with Beck's colossal bodyguard, Palai Olivia Richtors, who's 7'2" in frame, finally gives Reacher a worthy physical challenge. It's a solid premise, but the emotional beats don't always land as forcefully as the punches. What's missing in Season 3 is the emotional depth that defined its predecessors. Alan Ritchson still commands every scene with his blend of stoic calm and quiet menace, but outside of a few poignant moments with Richard, the show's heart beats a little weaker. Maria Sten's Frances needly returns, but mostly via video calls from her Chicago office, serving more as a narrative crutch than a true partner. Cassid's Duffy is entertaining and full of potential, but her character feels underwritten until the later episodes. Compared to standouts like Willa Fitzgerald's Roscoe or Sean Cios, David O'Donnell, this season's ensemble feels more like filler than family. To be clear, Reacher still delivers where it counts. The fights are brutal and satisfying, and one standout episode flashing back to Reach's days as an Army major, particularly his bond with rookie MP Dominique Cole. Mariah Robinson adds a much-needed emotional gut punch. It's arguably the most affecting hour of Reacher so far. But even with those highlights, the cracks are starting to show. Characters make baffling choices that seem to exist solely to keep the plot moving, often at the expense of logic or consistency. And while the series has never aimed to be high art, it usually prided itself on street-smart writing and tactical intelligence. That edge feels dulled here. A new season, a new romance, this time between Reacher and Duffy. Unfortunately, unlike his previous connections with Roscoe and Dixon, this one feels obligatory, lacking chemistry or narrative justification. It's not offensive, just perfunctory, more of a checkbox than a relationship we care about. To the show's credit, the final 2 episodes bring back some of the punch that was missing earlier. Anthony Michael Hall finally gets to show more nuance as Zachary Beck, moving beyond the stock villain mold. Duffy also steps up in a satisfying way, and while the climax may run a little long, it's filled with enough crowd-pleasing payoffs to leave viewers mostly satisfied. Still, the series formula is starting to wear thin. Sean and Nick Santo has crafted a consistent blueprint, but Season 3's plot twists feel more mechanical than meaningful. It might be time for Reacher to break the mold before the formula starts working against it. Season 3 of Reacher is still a compelling watch, especially for fans of the series and the novels. Ritchson continues to impress, and the show's commitment to gritty, grounded action remains strong, but the emotional core is fading and the supporting cast doesn't quite measure up. It's a good season, but for a show that once felt exceptional. Good might not be good enough. The third season of Reacher drew to a close with an epic finale that wrapped up the story with conflict revenge and some happy endings. In a way, unfinished business is much like the previous two finales in the series, especially with how things wrap up. Yet, the unique story this year allowed the narrative to take a fresh new path to a familiar destination. Things work out, but Reacher and his allies face threats unlike ones they've tackled before. Ultimately, Reacher Season 3 is a revenge story. Xavier Quinn killed Dominique Cole, the first soldier reached as part of the Criminal Investigation Division of the U.S. Army. He blamed himself for her death, in part because he didn't back her up to arrest Quinn. He did this so his protégé could get the credit for the arrest. Only Quinn was more formidable and violent than any of them expected. As he did, then Reacher would only be satisfied if Quinn died at his hands. Yet over the course of the past 7 episodes, Reacher prioritized saving the lives of innocents. There was Teresa Daniel, a criminal informant captured by Quinn. There was also Richard Beck, the son of Zachary, a gun hunter whose operation was hijacked by Quinn. Arguably, saving them honored Cole much more than the murder of the man who killed her. Reacher star Alan Ritchson said the 3 hardest weeks of his life were filming the fight scene with the massive Powai, watching the confrontation that built up over the season. It makes sense why it took so long to film. The fight actually takes up a significant chunk of the screen time in the Season 3 finale. Yet unlike many big fights in movies or shows, this one didn't get boring or tedious. Each agonizing moment trading blows was earned. At one point, the two fall into the roaring waters of the cove near Zachary Beck's house. This sequence reminded Ritchson of his time on Smallville as Aquaman. Yet the best part of the fight was how it ended. Powai is the first enemy viewers have seen who is stronger than Reacher. In a purely physical fight, he would have lost. Yet Reacher tricks him by blocking the barrel of an M60 hanging in the compound's gatehouse, like Chekhov's machine gun. Eagle-eyed viewers can actually catch the moment he does it too. As Powai shuffles off this mortal coil, Reacher acknowledges he wasn't as big or strong, but he is smarter. After 2 seasons of watching Reacher barrel through enemies like a stoic Hulk, it was refreshing to see him actually on his back foot. There's no question that Reacher is a superhero, but his fight with Powai helped humanize him. It also makes the moments he dominates lesser villains that much more satisfying. This whole season allowed the titular character to showcase his brains over his brawn. One of the best character relationships in the season was between Zachary and Richard Beck. Zachary was a gun hunter who had to give over his business to Quinn, who kidnapped Richard and cut off his ear. Father and son reached a sense of understanding in the previous episode, and Zachary saved Richard by pointing the toy gun his son got him for his birthday at the villa. He paid for that with his life. But it was a touching moment when he finally protected Richard from Quinn. Richard begged to reach her. "You were right about my dad. He did the best he could with me. I'm glad I got to see the good in him before he died. I just wish I got to see more of it when he was still alive." After the conflict was over, Richard's future was uncertain. His father's assets would have been seized by law enforcement. He would have lost everything. Yet earlier in the season, he told Reacher he wanted to leave it all behind anyway. Taking a bag full of cash in one of his father's cars, Richard fled the town to disappear into a new life. He'd lost both of his parents. but his father's sacrifice gave him a chance at a new life. Reach's influence also gave him a little more confidence to face the world on his own. Teresa Daniel, the other innocent kid wrapped up in this mess, was also rescued. Susan Duffy took her back to her grandmother. While Duffy lied about where Teresa was and why she was missing, Reacher doesn't dwell on any of that. Rather, all viewers see are the two hugging each other, happy to see each other again. Like Richard's ending, not dwelling on the fallout of their traumatic experiences allows it to feel like a true happy ending. There was plenty of action in the Season 3 finale, beyond just the fight between Powai and Ryko. The episode opens with the ambush of the ATF agents by Quinn's hired guns. None of the ATF agents survived, despite Reacher being perched with a sniper rifle, which he was going to use to murder Quinn. Beyond just being some fun gun play for viewers, this prevented Reacher from doing something uncharacteristically stupid. As they try to infiltrate Zachary Beck's birthday party, where Queen is sealing his arms deal with Yemen terrorists, Frances Negately proves she's earned her spin-off series. The brief scene in which she tells a nosy waiter that she's a private detective investigating his nemesis Murray is funny. While she's just as lethal as Reacher, her skill set is more about investigation and subterfuge. Meanwhile, Duffy and Viewaver sneak through the house to rescue Teresa and Richard, having their own confrontations. Just like the fight with Poway, the way these action scenes were constructed was inspired. Rather than just static shots of people shooting and taking cover, it was dynamic and active. Villanueva fought off a security guard while Duffy outsmarted two of the terrorist goons. When all hell breaks loose because Quinn openly kills the buyers and steals their money, the ensuing chaos is glorious. So, while it all ends like the past two seasons, Reacher Season 3 wraps up its story in a fresh and inventive way. Susan Duffy and Jack Reacher in dirty clothes with superficial wounds, standing in front of an estate from Reacher, image via Amazon Prime Video. Another fun scene comes when Duffy tells Reacher she's not interested in a romantic relationship. He jokes that she took the speech he usually gives, which may be true for the books. Yet in the past two seasons, Reacher's love interests have all the agency. Both Roscoe Conklin and Carla Dixon are in the driver's seat for their version of this conversation. Frankly, it's refreshing to have the women send Reacher on his way rather than the opposite. Reacher has been a massive hit for Prime Video with both seasons, pulling in great reviews and massive ratings, and fans need to see these shows too. The final 20 minutes of the episode are the only parts of Reacher Season 3 that feel familiar. The series has to wrap up the character stories, ensuring satisfying conclusions for them, and send Reacher off a wandering into the sunset. However, the show has to avoid making this necessary denouement feel rote. There's an almost rushed, tacked-on feeling to this one. Season 1 ended with Reacher saying goodbye to Conklin and Finlay, whereas Season 2 ended with the surviving special investigators commiserating over a fire. Season 3's ending does the job, but it's not as dynamic as all the story that preceded it. Extra information: Reacher Season 3 has received near universal acclaim, continuing the Prime Video series streak of explosive action and gripping storytelling. Based on Lee Child's Persuader, this third outing sees Alan Ritchson return as Jack Reacher, a stoic nomadic ex-military investigator. As usual, the season introduces a fresh-setting mystery and cast, though Maria Sten's Frances needly remains the lone recurring ally. This time, the story unfolds in a seemingly quiet coastal college town in Maine. Underneath its calm surface, Reacher uncovers a dangerous network of corruption and kidnapping tied to a smuggling front known as Bizarre Bazaar. Going undercover as a DA informant, the works with Boston agent Susan Duffy to infiltrate the operations of Zachary Beck, a suspiciously wealthy businessman. But Reach's mission takes a personal turn when he discovers that Beck's operation is entangled with an old enemy, Xavier Quinn, a treacherous former operative Reacher once believed was dead. This film, directed by Sam Hill, written by Scott Sullivan, showrunner Nick Santos, starring Alan Ritchson, Maria Stemp, Sonia Cassidy, Johnny Birchto, Roberto Montesinos, Olivier Richtors, Brian Anthony, Michael Hallno of Episodes 8 Sogies. This is their view of Reacher Season 3 movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe West Films to our channel. Thanks for watching.